Hey everyone, welcome back to Quiet Waters Currents. If you joined us for episode 1, you know this show is about slowing things down just enough to really understand the places we live in, invest in, and care about along the North Carolina coast. Last episode, I teased that we'd be diving into Sneads Ferry, and we are. Sneads Ferry absolutely deserves its own dedicated episode, and we're going to do that. Its history, its people, its relationship with the water in Camp Lejeune. That story deserves more than just a quick pass. But before we talk about where to buy near the coast, we need to talk about how to buy near the water, because coastal real estate is different. Not better or worse, just different. And whether you're looking at Sneads Ferry, Topsail Island, Surf City, even Wilmington, these fundamentals don't change just because the zip code does. So today's episode is kind of foundational. This is the kind of knowledge that makes every future decision easier, how you evaluate properties, how you think about risk, and how you move forward with confidence instead of just guesswork. So just know that coastal living is incredible, and this is about preparation and understanding the rules of the environment before you write an offer, so that there are fewer surprises and a lot more clarity when the paperwork starts moving. If you've ever wondered why buying near the water feels different, or why people do it well and seem calm while a lot of others feel rushed, then this episode is for you. So let's get into it. So let's talk about something that surprises a lot of buyers the first time they experience it firsthand. Buying a home near the water is not the same as buying a home inland. Not even close. Coastal real estate plays by a slightly different set of rules, some written, some unwritten, and some enforced by Mother Nature on a bad day. First, the obvious part, environment matters more here. Salty air isn't just a vibe, it's actually chemistry that corrodes metal, shortens the lifespan of HVAC systems, fasteners, railings, basically anything that's metal on outside, and things that last decades inland may need attention much sooner at the coast. Moisture is constant, not seasonal, and storms aren't just abstract possibilities. They're really part of the long-term ownership equation. And then there's insurance and inspections, which get more layered the closer you get to the water. Coastal homes often involve multiple insurance policies, homeowners, wind and hail, flood, and each one has its own rules and thresholds. And inspections go deeper in some cases also. Elevation, drainage, roof age, different foundation types, prior storm exposure, and all of that matters more here. And skipping steps tends to get more expensive later. Resale is another big difference. Coastal homes don't just get bought, they get interpreted. Buyers aren't only asking, is this a good house? They're asking, does this feel like the coastal lifestyle that I want? Long-term thinking matters more because markets near the water can be emotional and seasonal and just more sensitive to change, whether that's environmental regulations, swings in the insurance market, or how people use the home over time. And that leads to the part no spreadsheet can fully capture. Emotions just run higher with coastal homes. People don't usually go and buy a beach or soundside home just for like the shelter. They buy it for the sunsets, the family memories, the escape that they've always dreamed of. And it just, in my opinion, becomes a little more of a person's identity. And that emotional pull, it can be wonderful, but it also can cloud people's judgment if you're not careful. Coastal purchases, they reward buyers who can hold both truths at once. The romance and the allure of coastal living along with the reality. That's why coastal real estate isn't harder. It's just a little more intentional. It asks better questions. And when done well, it gives something back that's hard to quantify, but pretty easy to feel. And understanding these differences doesn't take the magic out of it. It protects it, in my opinion. We're super passionate about helping people, fulfill their dreams of buying beach houses where their families can come to every summer, where the houses can even make a little bit of money and serve as a good investment, and also just provide a solid home for someone, looking to relocate to this area and move here. So we're going to dig into flood zones next, which is a huge factor and a lot of people's first question when researching coastal properties. All right, let's talk about something that rarely makes the highlight reels, but absolutely shows up in the closing costs: flood zones. Flood zones are one of those topics coastal homeowners wish they understood better, usually right after their lender brings it up. Along the North Carolina coast, you'll hear a few common flood zone designations. There's VE, which is the heavy hitter. We like to say it stands for very expensive. That's not the case, but it's a good way to remember it. These are the coastal areas subject to wave action during storms. Think oceanfront, on the islands, places where water doesn't just rise, but it moves with force. Homes here usually require specialized construction and higher flood insurance premiums. VE, very expensive. Then there's AE, which means a higher risk of flooding than normal, but without the same wave energy as VE zones. Water can still rise significantly here during storm surges, and flood insurance is required, but premiums vary more based on elevation and construction. If you're looking at this map to my side here, the VE is the green zone, the AE is the blue zone, and you can find these maps on any of the county GIS systems and just plug in your address and select the overlay. If a portion of the house it touches one of these zones, a lender is going to require you to carry flood insurance. Whether or not this house has ever flooded in the past, they don't care. They trust the maps. So I have a property that's in a AE flood zone and has never even come close to flooding, but we still have to pay flood insurance every year. Now, it's not crazy expensive. It's like $650 a year, but the lender still requires it. Some people who own their properties outright and don't have a mortgage on it sometimes choose to not carry flood insurance if their house is, say, like built on stilts. That, can certainly save them lots of money in the near term. It's a little more risky, obviously, but the flood insurance only covers you if water comes from the ground up. And a lot of the times, even during major storms, there's areas within these flood zones that, don't get a ton of water from the ground up. The major risk will come from the wind-driven rain, which is where wind and hail insurance comes into play. We'll get into that in a future episode. But coming back to the flood zones, next is the 0.2% annual chance flood zone. That name is so long. I wish they would come up with a better, shorter acronym for it. That is the yellow shaded area on the maps. And this is sometimes called the 500-year floodplain. I don't know why. It's not like we have data from 500 years ago that we can measure it against. And this isn't really considered high risk, but it's not zero risk either to a lender. It's basically FEMA's way of saying unlikely that this will ever flood, but not impossible. And finally, the unshaded area is just flood zone X. This is the low risk zone. This is everywhere that is not in the other three. And flood insurance is not required by lenders here, though some homeowners still choose to carry it because, well, water does whatever it wants. Here's the part that surprises a lot of people. If any portion of the house touches a flood zone other than X, then most lenders are going to require flood insurance. It doesn't matter if the house itself sits on high ground. It doesn't matter if it's never flooded. It doesn't matter if the owners lived there for 30 years without any issues. Lenders don't insure, memories. They insure maps. And flood insurance isn't about whether water has ever flooded your house. It's about whether it could, according to FEMA's current data. And that distinction matters when you're buying, refinancing, or selling. It's a very common question from, first-time home buyers and people looking at real estate in this area is if the house is in a flood zone or not. And while that's a good question, that doesn't quite get deep enough. So that's why it's important to work with an agent here and an insurance agent who can help educate you on this process. And that's why flood zones should be reviewed early in the process, not just kind of discovered halfway through underwriting, because it does affect monthly payments, insurance costs, and sometimes whether an investment deal pencils out at all. So this is not a glamorous topic, but it's very coastal and very important. Understanding this concept ahead of time can save a lot of stress and a few surprises, especially when the paperwork starts flying. So if you have any questions about flood zones, please reach out to us, send me a message, and would be happy to hop on a call and take a look at, your property and help you work through the different considerations. But yeah, last week we talked about Jacksonville, and today on Quiet Waters Currents, we're heading just a little south and a little quieter to a place that doesn't try to impress you really, but somehow it kind of does. Sneads Ferry, aka the Sneaky Freaky. So if Topsail Island is the kind of polished front porch, Sneads Ferry is the working dock out back. This is a town built on tides and tradition. Long before beach tourism became a business model here, Sneads Ferry was a fishing and shrimping village, and in many ways, it still is. For generations, long before I got here, shrimp boats have left these waters before sunrise and come back heavy and honest in the afternoons. This town helped put North Carolina shrimp on tables up and down the East Coast, and that legacy is still celebrated every year at the Sneads Ferry Shrimp Festival. It's part seafood fest, part hometown reunion, and part reminder that culture does taste better when it's local. One of the defining features of Sneads Ferry is its unmistakable military presence, shaped largely by its proximity to the back gate of Camp Lejeune. This isn't like a base adjacent town in name only. Many service members choose Sneads Ferry because it feels real and rooted in a place where, hard work matters and neighbors really look out for one another. It's not unusual here for your next door neighbor to be either a lifelong fisherman who knows these waters by heart or a Marine who just finished a deployment or a long day on a training exercise. And it's a really cool mix of like saltwater grit and military discipline. And it gives Sneads Ferry this kind of quiet strength. What makes Sneads Ferry special isn't just like flash or polish, it's authenticity. And it's the fact that water still matters here, not just as a view, but as a livelihood for a lot of people. It's a place where people wave when you drive by them. Stories last long over campfires at night. And the past isn't something just, paved over. And that's why we're highlighting Sneads Ferry this week. Quiet Waters Currents, we're not just about hype towns or hot takes. It's about places like this, places with roots and stories, and places that remind us why coastal North Carolina feels different when you just slow down enough to notice it. So as we keep exploring these coastal communities, some growing super fast, some holding steady, Sneads Ferry is a perfect reminder that progress doesn't always mean just replacing what came before. Sometimes it means honoring it and respecting it. And coming up next, we'll take a look at how towns like this balance growth and housing and heritage without hopefully losing the soul that made people fall in love with it in the first place. Sneads Ferry is certainly growing a lot. There's lots of construction going on, a few new apartment buildings, some more commercial spots with great restaurants and more things to do, a new brewery in town, Topsail Island Brewing, and just some really cool spots that are making it an even more desirable place for people to live. Super close to Camp Lejeune. It's very close to North Topsail Beach. It's a great location for either military people moving here who want to really experience the coastal lifestyle, or even retirees looking for just a quieter life with a lower cost of living than lots of other, beach adjacent towns. And Sneads Ferry definitely holds a special spot in my heart. We've lived there for a period of time over the past 10 years that we've been here in North Carolina. And yeah, it's definitely a town with a lot of just history and community. All right, let's do a quick end of 2025 market recap for 6 towns right here in our coastal backyard. So big picture before we start, 2025 was not a flat year. Some areas surged, some areas cooled a bit. And that spread tells us a really interesting story about demand, inventory, and buyer behavior that we're going to try and learn from and apply to this year, 2026. So let's start in Surf City. Surf City's average sale price in 2025 came in at $745,000. This number was hard to believe when I saw it, but that is actually a 24% increase from 2024. Surf City continues to be one of the most competitive and emotionally driven markets on the island. There's a ton of lifestyle demand, ton of short-term rental interest, and limited inventory all play a role here. So next up, let's venture on north a bit to North Topsail Beach. The average sale price in North Topsail Beach in 2025 was $760,000, which is a moderate but respectable 3% increase year over year. So North Topsail Beach market, it stayed strong, but much more measured. There's a little less volatility, fewer bidding wars, and buyers had the opportunity to be more selective, especially at the higher price points in North Topsail Beach. Now let's come off the island for a second and talk about Sneads Ferry. Sneads Ferry average sale price was $391,000, still in the green, but only a 1% increase from 2024. This is what stability looks like. It's affordable relative to the coast, steady military and local demand, and not a lot of dramatic swings. It didn't spike, but it didn't slide either. Headed back down 17, Holly Ridge, North Carolina, right next door to Sneads Ferry. Holly Ridge surprised a lot of people, myself included. The average sale price was $441,000. Shout out to Summer House for driving that up. And that is actually a 19% increase year over year from 2024 to 2025. So Holly Ridge quietly had a big year. New construction, maybe people priced out of Surf City, but want to be in close proximity to the water without island pricing really showed up in these numbers. Heading further down south, Hampstead, average sale price in Hampstead is a considerable bit higher than Surf City or than Sneads Ferry and Holly Ridge at $545,000. And Hampstead had a moderate but solid 3% increase. Hampstead market stayed healthy and balanced, good schools, year-round residents, and just pretty consistent demand being closer to Wilmington. But buyers were much more price sensitive than they were a few years ago. Their average days on market definitely went up in Hampstead. And finally, Topsail Beach, best kept secret in coastal North Carolina, in my opinion. Average sale price, $1,054,000, which is actually the only kind of local town with a price decrease. It's an 8% decrease from 2024. And I want to explain that a little bit. That doesn't mean that Topsail Beach is struggling. It means that ultra high-end coastal markets finally saw buyers pause, negotiate, or just wait. There are fewer sales at the top, and that can move averages quickly. And definitely in a small market like this, there's not a ton of transactions in Topsail Beach every year to begin with. So it can fluctuate a lot when you're looking at averages. When you step back and look at all six together, the market didn't move as one. It fractured. There's mid-price coastal and near coastal areas saw strong appreciation. High-end luxury cooled a bit. And affordability plus location mattered more last year than in previous years. So if you're a homeowner, a buyer, or an investor in this area, this kind of data is exactly why hyper-local analysis matters. One town over can be a completely different story. This is what we're going to keep breaking down going into 2026. And we're excited to go over more data with you and hopefully help you make educated decisions regarding real estate and the future. I hope you enjoyed this segment. As we wrap up episode 2 of Quiet Waters Currents, the big takeaway is this: coastal real estate rewards preparation. The water, the weather, the insurance, the inspections, all of it asks you to slow down and understand the landscape before you make a move. So whether you're thinking about Sneads Ferry, Topsail Island, Surf City, Jacksonville, Wilmington, or really anywhere along the coast, the goal is to be informed, and confidence comes from knowing what questions to ask before the emotions and the timelines start to compress the decision. It's a pleasure to be with you today. In the next episode, we have the honor of interviewing a local business owner, Dan with Salty Turtle Beer Company, on the latest expansion of their beer operation, the opening of Salty's Surf Shack right next to the pier in Surf City. And until then, thanks for tuning in with us. If this episode has helped you clarify anything or raise questions you hadn't thought to ask, that's the point. And please reach out to us. This is Quiet Waters Currents, where we focus on clarity, community, and making smart coastal decisions that stand the test of time. Until next time, I'll see you on the water.